we have a repair on a Skeeball Model S controller today. This is out of my Skeeball machine, and while I was playing in the middle of the game, the sound started to have an error to it. It sounded as kind of garbled and gibberish. And then when that game finished, I started another game, and in between those games I noticed that this chase pattern that's normally on Skeeball displays when they're in attract mode, this was going very fast compared to normal. And upon starting that second game, I also realized that the game only gave me about 5 or 6 of the balls rather than all 9. Now on this controller and in this machine, it's the single cradle setup that drops all 9 balls at the start of the game, and then it keeps every ball as it's thrown. So I had troubles with the audio, troubles with the display, and seemingly troubles with the solenoid circuit. So I pulled it out of the machine and opened it up and started to look around at the schematics. And rather than thinking of this as 3 separate issues that I might have, looking at the schematics, I noticed that there is a timer chip on this PCB that has a couple different clock functions to it. And if I go back to those original issues, what I determined was, rather than it being 3 separate issues, the whole system was simply running too fast, meaning this chase pattern was about twice the speed. And the sound wasn't actually garbled, it was just being played at about twice the speed. And the solenoid circuit that needs to hold in for a few seconds was being released too quickly. So by substituting in this timer chip, which is an 8253 made by Intel, the functions on my machine have been restored. So I have it on the bench now, and to test everything out, I have the display from the game. I just took everything out, including the wiring harness that gets plugged in right beneath the rectangular connector, and then this rectangular connector actually powers the 3 lights: the free game, the game over, and winner light, in whatever order they happen to be in. And then I also hooked up a speaker to this 2-position connector, an 8-ohm speaker, the same that's in the game, so I could see if the sound was functioning correctly. And then for all the switches, my game is a micro switch game. I looked on the schematics and just made a quick test harness. That's not pretty, but it works. So on here, to get a game to start, we need a micro switch for the coin. And then for the scoring pockets, we need a 10 switch. And then I have the 100 pockets, so this is on the schematics called the bonus switch, where this is actually worth 50 points. We'll talk about that in a bit. And then we also need a ball count switch, which is at the top of the lane as the balls roll back in. Now, all of these switches, the coin and the point ones, are just normally open, so they need a ground and then a signal. But the ball count on the schematics actually needs 3 wires for ground, a normally open signal, then a normally closed signal. So it actually has 3, and it won't work with just 2. So we can actually play Skeeball here on the bench. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to hit this switch and then start a game. So we hear the startup tune. It's at a normal pace. Our displays have stopped strobing and they're back at 0. And then when we hit our switches here, it's going to add points, but we're not going to get the ball count to increment or a sound until we hit that ball count switch. And my game has mechanical switches in the trough, so to get 50 points, the ball enters the 50-point pocket and actually rolls down past 5 10-point switches that are all wired in series, I guess in parallel. But so a 50-point score means that you're hitting the 10-point switch 5 times. So if we just hit the 10-point switch once, we get 10 points, and then we're not going to get the ball count to increment until the ball enters the lane. And we also get a tone. So then 20 is two hits on the 10s, and then 30, 40, and then 50 would be 5 hits on the 10 switch. And while we are hearing that tune, we can also see that that LED is flashing, and that is for the beacon light that's on top of our game. The other AC circuit drive here that we have is for the solenoid. And when we restart a game, that will stay lit for as long as the solenoid is energized. So it stays on for maybe 3 or 4 seconds at the start of a game. Now there also is an identical empty circuit here to these two. That might be on other Model S games like Scat Cats that uses a target reset motor that's driven off of this middle position and is populated on a Scat Cats. So now to score a 100-point shot, this will be the same as the switch that's right beneath the 100-point pocket, but this is only worth 50 points because once it gets across the horizontal tray for the 100-point pockets, it still needs to pass 5 10-point switches. So to get 100 points, I have to hit the 100 pocket, which gives us the first 50, and then the ball would roll past 5 10-point switches, and then hit the ball count, and that's our 100-point score. So now, if we just want to finish the game out, and if you missed every pocket entirely, it would hit the ball count switch first and give you that embarrassing tone. So again, our beacon light's going off. Then this is going to sit here and flash the score for quite a while, 10 or 15 seconds probably, and then I'll go back to game over. And we'll restart another game so we can watch that solenoid circuit LED light up. But other things to do while you have this apart, make sure that this fuse is the right value. This should be a 1/2 amp slow blow. This can still be done with the cover on too. I've just taken the cover off. That sticks up past the cover. Make sure that's the right value. There's also an F1 on the circuit board itself. I don't know the value off the top of my head, but F1 on the schematics. Make sure that's the right value and the right type of fuse, and then there's another one for the AC power on the outside of the cabinet, right where the power comes in. That should be a 2 amp slow blow. So make sure those values are right. That way if something fails on your game, you don't have a catastrophic failure because someone overfused the game. Also, make sure that your fan's working. It might be darn near impossible to not know when it's working since it's so loud. And then try and blow the dust out of there too, just so that it's cooling things efficiently. So now we're back in attract mode, and then I'll go ahead and hit the coin button, and then we can watch the solenoid circuit stay energized so that it can drop all the balls in the game. So now we have our Skeeball back up and running.